Welcome to our channel. Hollywood Movie Review. Lupin 2021 Movie Review. Lupin is a French mystery thriller television series created by George K. and François Uzan. It premiered on Netflix on January 8, 2021, when the first set of 5 episodes were released. Another 5 aired on June 11, 2021. Its third installment debuted on October 5, 2023. The series has been renewed for a 4th part, which is scheduled to be released on October 23, 2026. The show stars Omar in the role of Arsène Diop, a man who is inspired by the adventures of master thief Arsène Lupin, a character created by Maurice Leblanc in the early 1900s. The first part, consisting of 5 episodes, is subtitled Dans l'ombre d'Arsène, in the shadow of Arsène, referring to the primary character's inspiration. The series was watched by 76 million households during its first month, becoming the most watched non-English series on Netflix at the time. Lupin debuted to critical acclaim, with Psy's performance in the leading role singled out for particular praise. It has received several accolades, winning a Critics' Choice Award for Best Foreign Language Series and being nominated for Best Drama Series at the International Emmy Awards and the Golden Globe Awards. The story follows professional thief Arsène Diop, the only son of an immigrant from Senegal who had come to France to seek a better life for himself and his child. Arsène's father is framed for the theft of an expensive diamond necklace by his employer, the wealthy and powerful Hubert Pellegrini, and takes his own life in his prison cell, leaving the 14-year-old Arsène to fend for himself on the streets of Paris. 25 years later, inspired by a book about gentleman thief Arsène Lupin his father had given him on his birthday, Arsène sets out to clear his father's name and get revenge on the Pellegrini family, using his charisma and mastery of thievery, subterfuge, and disguise to expose Pellegrini's crimes. The second part focuses on the search for Arsène's kidnapped son, Raoul, and the plan to take Pellegrini down. The latter was not killed but imprisoned. The third part revolves around the theft of the priceless Black Pearl by Arsène, and his attempt to mend the relationships with his wife and son. On July 19, 2018, Netflix ordered a new series, to be produced by Gaumont, about the character Arsène Lupin, portrayed by Omar. In a 2018 interview, SY revealed that Arsène Lupin, who is an iconic and charismatic character, will take on a new life in this modern adaptation, unique in its genre. Netflix confirmed that George K. and François Uzan would be the showrunners, with Leterrier directing the first 3 episodes. Initially, it was planned that SY would appear as Arsène Lupin himself. However, upon being brought in as the series showrunner and main writer, George K. proposed that SY should instead play a newly created character, Arsène Diop, the son of a Senegalese chauffeur, who decides to style himself after the gentleman thief upon discovering Maurice Leblanc's books as a teenager in the 1990s. This allowed the series to explore modern-day cultural and racial issues in France. SY commented that the character had to be a Frenchman from today. That's why we have a black guy of African descent, living in the projects. It's a new face of France. K described the notion of good arrogance as being integral to his conception of Arsène's personality. It's arrogance you don't object to, you just admire. It's, I'm going to literally take all your life savings. But if I do it with a big enough smile on my face, you kind of don't mind. SY identified with K's characterization of Arsène, stating that my mom's a cleaner. My dad used to work in a factory. Coming from where I come from, I had to be arrogant to be accepted. Sometimes you have to pretend. The good arrogance helps you. K was also keen to emphasize how Arsène's lifestyle affects his relationships with his estranged wife, Claire, and their son, Raoul. They're fundamental to the whole being of Arsène Diop. He has to work that out, because that's a permanent situation. He has the mother of his child and his child that's never going to change. The dynamic between Arsène and Claire differs substantially from the depictions of women in the series' source material, with K noting that the original Arsène Lupin was ludicrously successful with women in a very sort of disposable way, which probably felt at the time quite fun but now feels really dated. I don't want to write that guy, I want to write a guy who's amazing at breaking into a museum but also can't work out how to explain certain things to his kid or ex-partner. In an interview with the French publication 20 Minutes, Ludivine Sagnier voiced her appreciation for the fact that although Claire continues to care deeply about Assane, she is able to remain true to herself and her desires. On developing the character of Youssef Guedira, a fellow Lupin devotee who happens to be a police detective charged with hunting Assane down, Kay said that a lot of our favorite shows have their own podcasts and fan bases and all of that stuff, and I thought it'd be cool if that was incorporated into the series itself, so it becomes like a live adaptation within the series. It takes someone who knows Lupin to recognize he's here at all, and then to start exploring that as an idea felt quite fun because you can back-reference stuff, you can lay a load of breadcrumbs that relate to the books and bring those back in again. K. commented further on the series' depiction of the French police force, specifically Guedira's immediate superiors, Captain Romain Lagier and Lieutenant Sophia Belkacem. It's not that they can't get Assane, it's just that they can't agree on how best to do it in the context of their own hierarchy, so that makes them more rounded as characters. Filming of the first 5 episodes was completed primarily in Paris, on various streets and at the Louvre, both inside and out. According to research by Condé Nast Traveler, other important locations included La Nomici Pond at Parc Monceau and Musée Nissim de Camandou on Rue de Monceau. The latter stands in as the Pellegrini home and is open to the public. Other listed locations include College Lycée Jacques Bicourt, a parking garage on Rue d'Abbeville, the Marche Byron Flea Market, the Jardin du Luxembourg, the Pont d'Arts, l'Appartement Saint-Martin, near Port Saint-Martin, and the Maison d'Arrêt de Bois d'Arcy prison. The publication adds that parts of the 5th episode were filmed in the town of Étretat, which is located along the coast of Normandy. This location is significant because Maurice Leblanc, who created the character Arsène Lupin, lived in the municipality. The second set of 5 episodes were already filmed by the end of 2020 and were released on June 11, 2021. On November 18, 2021, Netflix and Omar Sy confirmed that filming was underway in Paris for the series' third part. Shooting continued into 2022. On February 25, production was temporarily halted after €300,000 worth of equipment was stolen from the set, resuming 3 days later. Many of the exteriors were filmed at Place Vendôme, while scenes set at the Hôtel de Beauvau were filmed at the Italian Embassy in Paris. A teaser trailer for the show's third part was released during Netflix's Tudum event in September 2022. On April 20, 2023, Netflix announced that Part 3 would premiere on the platform on October 5 of that year and that it would consist of 7 episodes, with Ludovic Bernard, Daniel Gru, and Xavier Gens directing. On May 12, 2025, Netflix announced that filming for the show's 8-episode 4th installment had begun, with S.Y., Ludivine Sagnier, Antoine Goey, Soufiane Guerrab, and Shireen Boutella all reprising their roles, alongside newcomers Theo Christine and Leica Blanc-Francard, and with Edouard Salater, Everardo Gout, and Hugo Gelin directing. Production wrapped on September 16, 2025. The series' music is composed by Matthew Lamali, who also appears briefly in the finale of Part 2 as the orchestra conductor at the Pellegrini's concert. On writing the score, Lamali commented, "To me, Lupin is all about heritage, a father passing on a literary heritage to his son, and the latter continuing the legacy in the present time." The question then became, how do I translate this in music? I decided to take a hybrid approach and mix my classical heritage with more modern sounds, and this is what you can hear in the soundtrack, classical writing blended together with hip-hop beats. Lupin is the first French series to rank among the top 10 on Netflix in the United States, reaching number 3 on January 10, 2021. It was ranked number 1 in France and many other countries in Europe, including Germany, Austria, Italy, Spain, Denmark, and Sweden, as well as other countries such as Canada, Brazil, Argentina, and South Africa. As of January 31, 2021, the show was watched by 76 million households, making it the second most successful debut ever for an original Netflix show, after Bridgerton. In April, Netflix revealed that Lupin was the most watched title on the company's streaming service in the first quarter of 2021. On July 21, 2021, it was reported that 54 million households watched the second part of the show, a drop compared to the first installment. Lupin still managed to become one of the biggest shows during the second quarter of 2021. Between the release of Part 2 in June 2021 and Part 3 in October 2023, Netflix altered its methods for calculating a series' success, dividing the number of hours it was viewed by its total length for an estimation of total completed viewings. In its first 4 days on the platform, Part 3 of Lupin was viewed approximately 11.6 million times, topping the international, non-English language, television chart and becoming the strongest launch for a new season of an international show since 2021. Part 3 reached number 1 in many countries in Europe and Latin America and hit number 2 in the United States on October 9, and again on October 11. By January 2024, Part 3 had received 50 million completed viewings. Lupin is one of the most successful Netflix series in a language other than English, with all 3 parts achieving placements on the streamer's international top 10. In a press release published in October 2023, Netflix described the show's first 2 parts as mainstays on the most popular non-English TV list on the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes. The first part holds an approval rating of 98%, with an average rating of 7.70/10, based on 48 reviews. The site's critical consensus reads, Omar effortlessly hits every mark in Lupin, an engrossing espionage thriller that lives up to its source material and then some. On Metacritic, the first part has a score of 82 out of 100, based on 8 reviews. Writing for the new paper, Jonathan Roberts stated that if it was a film, it would be a contender for the year's best. Daniel D'Addario of Variety wrote that the cliffhanger at the end of the first series will leave any viewer who's taken the ride eager for more. Rolling Stone's Alan Sepinwall praised Psy's performance, writing that it all works because so magnetic and charming that questioning plot logic feels wildly besides the point. Karen Hahn of Slate wrote that Lupin doesn't waste a single minute, packing each and every moment full of suspense. On Rotten Tomatoes, the second part holds an approval rating of 96%, with an average rating of 8.10/10, based on 28 reviews. The site's critical consensus reads, smart, sexy, and stylish, Lupin's highly bingeable second season is perfect summer viewing. On Metacritic, the second part has a score of 80 out of 100 based on 7 reviews. On Rotten Tomatoes, the third part holds an approval rating of 100%, based on 18 reviews. The site's critical consensus reads, with a star as charming as Omar who needs a fresh formula. Lupin's third season sticks to its strengths and remains addictive as ever. On Metacritic, the third part has a score of 76 out of 100, based on 9 reviews. The show's third part received similarly positive reviews, although some critics felt that the new set of episodes suffered due to lower stakes for Assane's character. Nonetheless, Psy's performance was acclaimed once again, with Leela Latif of The Guardian calling him a born action star. Praise was also given to the expanded roles for the series' supporting cast, particularly Ludivine Sagnier as Claire. Lupin has been credited with repopularizing the character of Arsène Lupin, both in France and internationally. Arsène Lupin, Gentleman Burglar, the first collection of Lupin stories written by Maurice Leblanc, topped the children's literature book charts in France following the release of the series. The show also boosted tourism in Etretat, featured extensively in the 5th episode, to the point where the town's permanent residents struggled to deal with the influx of visitors. The 2025 Louvre robbery revived interest in the series, whose first episode was compared to The Heist. According to analysts at Just Watch, Lupin gained a 32% increase in search results 2 days prior to The Heist. On October 19, and a 100% boost in viewership occurred the week following the theft. Arsène Lupin, the gentleman burglar, is a man of many talents. Over the years, he's managed to use his extraordinary skills, lying, disguising, and sleight of hand, to name a few, to commit various larcenies without getting caught. But one of the ways he's always managed to stay one step ahead of the police is the fact that Lupin isn't even a real person. He's a fictional character from a book series by Maurice Leblanc. The real man behind all these thefts is Assane Diop. When Assane was 14, his father, an immigrant from Senegal, was falsely accused of stealing the Queen's necklace, which once belonged to Marie Antoinette, from his employer. Unable to prove his innocence, Assane's father signed a confession in prison and took his own life shortly after. The last gift Assane received from his father before his death was a copy of Leblanc's book. So to him, it's not just a book, it's his heritage, his method, his path. It might be too late to save his father but not to save his reputation. Assane is determined to prove his father's innocence. And he'll start by stealing back the very necklace his father was accused of taking all those years ago, and discovering what really happened to it back then. Assane describes his friends as having questionable morals, and the same could be said of Lupin. Although the show was filmed in French, Netflix dubbed it over in English for its release, including every foul word in the process. We hear multiple uses of the F word and S word among other profanities. The aftermath of Assane's father's suicide is shown on screen, which could be troubling for many. Other near deaths and injuries also take place in fight sequences. And of course, this is a show about a thief, so lying, stealing and those questionable morals all come into play as well. Lupin is sometimes described as the French Sherlock Holmes, albeit on the other side of the law. But when compared to the film adaptations of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's books, Lupin is a bit more risque. Assane hatches a scheme to steal the Queen's necklace from the Louvre. Two teens kiss. We see some cleavage on women's outfits. Two teens are seen in their swimsuits. A man and woman hug and kiss each other on the cheeks. We see a man's body after he hangs himself. People get into fist fights. A man is held over the edge of a balcony and threatened. Someone threatens to hurt Assane's ex-wife and son. Someone draws a gun. Several people get into a car wreck but are unharmed. A man rolls a joint. A teenage girl smokes. People lie, steal, and double-cross each other. A woman locks her car in fear when a black man attempts to help her with her engine, though she later unlocks it when she realizes he is her husband's new chauffeur. Her daughter later asks if it's true that black people can't swim, which involves a feint toward another, more ribald stereotype. We hear multiple uses of the F word and S word, as well as H and A. The French writer Georges K. has created a truly thrilling escapist adventure series with more than a touch of social commentary. He has taken a classic series of French novels revolving around Arsène Lupin as a gentleman thief, whose thefts are committed in order to bring about justice, and transferred them to a modern-day outsider, Assane Diop, Omar Sy. Assane is the son of a Senegalese father wrongfully accused of stealing a royal necklace from the wealthy Hubert Pellegrini, Hervé Pierre. The father died in disgrace in prison as a result, leaving the boy to grow up believing that his father was guilty. It is the fictitious thief/detective that Assane patterns himself after, his alias Paul Surnine derived from Arsène Lupin. He amasses a series of costumes, props, and disguises that he will use throughout the series to dodge in and out of prison, museums, mansions, apartments, and such in his quest for vengeance and justice. The story switches back and forth from 1995 when young Assane Diop, Mamadou Haidara, was a scholarship student making friends with the two people who would become his lifelong associates, to the present when the grown Assane, who has practically memorized the original Arsène Lupin novel and its almost 24 successors, has learned that his father had been framed. He takes on the alias of Paul Surnine so he can attend an exclusive auction at the Louvre and place a false bid on a valuable necklace once worn by Marie Antoinette. The owner of the necklace is the villainous Hubert Pellegrini, Hervé Pierre, super wealthy plutocrat and friend of cabinet ministers. This is the necklace that Assayne's father Babakar Diop, Fargus Asande, allegedly had stolen. Solving the mystery of its disappearance and reappearance will lead Assayne through a labyrinthine series of twists and turns that will keep you on the edge of your street, eagerly wondering what comes next. In a way, the story is about the legacy of an immigrant father to his son. It was from the library of Pellegrini that the father took the novel that he gave to his son to encourage the boy to read. Assayne will pass this same book to his own son Raoul, 18 Simon, in the hope of weaning him away from his overused cell phone. As the father had done, the boy becomes so captivated by the novel that he is soon consuming all of the others in the series as well. It will be from one of those books that Assayne obtains by a complicated maneuver the clever means of getting put in prison to gain access to the copy his father had written clues in. Assayne will find his father's markings, and well, to call this complicated is an understatement. Watch and see for yourself. Lupin rises above the norm by including so many other characters of interest, as well as the gentleman thief. There is Juliette Pellegrini, Hubert's beautiful daughter, unaware of his nefarious dealings as she sets about launching a charitable foundation and raising money for its program of enabling poor children to experience the arts. She is attracted to Assayne and will figure prominently in his incredibly Byzantine plot for justice. Once she learns of her father's evil ways, she will be torn between her love for him and for Assayne. In the flashbacks she is played by Leah Bono, and in the present by Clotilde Hesme. More important in Assayne's affections is Claire, Ludmila Makowski in flashbacks and Ludivine Sagnier in the present. He had met Claire in school, where she was one of 2 students who befriended and supported him against racist bullies. They grew so close that they became lovers, siring Raoul, until a falling out drove them apart. Nonetheless, they have remained on friendly terms out of concern for their son, as well as the embers of their once passionate affair that still smolder. The other lifelong friend from school days is Benjamin Firel, Antoine Goey, who now makes a living as a jeweler and dealer in antiquities. His expertise is very handy when Assayne obtains the Queen's necklace. The latter will use the gems from that necklace as an incentive and as a reward for those he wants to use in some way. Along with several thugs who answer to Pellegrini is Inspector Gabriel Dumont, Johan Dionnet as young Dumont, and Vincent Garanger in the present. It was he who first investigated the theft of the necklace and worked to obtain a confession from Babakar. When the old man refused to sign a confession, Pellegrini got Dumont to work on Pellegrini's wife Anne, Nicole Garcia, convincing her that the guilty man would get a better deal if he cooperated. She in turn convinced Babakar would be dealt with leniently if he signed the paper. When the court dealt with him severely, she became estranged from her husband, living with a sense of guilt, especially after the father died in prison. At the present, Dumont is the commissioner of the Paris Police Department, but still under the thumb of Pellegrini, and thus able to keep the latter abreast of the investigation and pursuit of Assayne. There is a moving encounter between the fugitive and pursuer when Assayne kidnaps Dumont for an intensive interrogation of the man concerning the robbery of the necklace and the treatment of his father. Dumont emerges as a concerned husband and father caught in the middle of the intrigue, so much so that the vengeance-consumed Assayne will do something that we rarely see in this kind of film. We also become acquainted with the 3 members of the team of police assigned to track down Assayne. They are Captain Romain Lagier, Vincent Lundez, Lieutenant Sophia Belkacem, M., Shireen Boutella, and Youssef Guidira, Soufiane Guerrab. Of these, Guidira is the most interesting because he too is a fan of the Arsène Lupin books. Early on, from observing Assayne's modus operandi, he thinks he sees a connection with those books that could be important to solving the identity of the man known as Paul Surnine, the fake buyer of the necklace at the Louvre auction. His colleagues brush him off, thinking his theory too eccentric until he will later become involved with Assayne in a very unexpected way. The last character worth describing, and who, despite appearing in just 1 episode, will probably leave a lasting impact on viewers, is the washed-up journalist Fabienne Biriot, and Benoit. Once well known and respected, She had investigated Hubert Pellegrini and his dirty arms dealings, even taping him talking about a terrorist attack on a French embassy in Kuala Lumpur. She had even written a book on this, but Pellegrini had been able to use his high government connections to discredit its claims and her character. Instead of his being exposed, she had been disgraced and blacklisted, forcing her into an alcoholic retirement. Although Assain finds her reluctant to enlist in his cause, he persists, so that when she yields, she feels a new surge of vitality and purpose. Although it is the action, lots of chases and fights, and extremely clever ways that Assain gets in and out of his escapades that make this a binge evoker, I watched the 10 episodes over 2 nights. The occasional societal references make me especially cherish the series. Early on, Assain observes that the upper class live in their own world and seldom take notice of those under them who do their bidding. Thus he is able at times to slip in under their notice, such as in the first episode he gets into the Louvre by posing as a janitor, and later into a banquet as a waiter. His Senegalese origins make him an outsider. Other immigrants from Europe might eventually be able to blend into French society, but his dark skin will mark him forever. At his school, several of the boys regard him as an intruder, hence they're bullying him. America is not the only nation with a race problem, we see. The photography is excellent, showing off the charming streets of Paris, often with the white dome of Sacré-Cœur Basilica gleaming in the distance during the day, and at night the searchlight from the Eiffel Tower sweeping across the sky. I especially loved the many shots inside the Louvre with its walls lined with famous painting. Great fun to see Assain as a janitor stopping for a moment in front of the Mona Lisa as if they were exchanging smiles or some secret known to just the two of them. Some of Assain's escapades might seem far-fetched, but his can-do perseverance in the pursuit of justice will both amuse and inspire you. Little wonder the series has become so popular on both sides of the Atlantic that Netflix has ordered a 3rd series. I have joined the ranks of those eager to tag along on the next round of adventures. I also expect and look forward to seeing actor Omar becoming an international star in film. This review will be in the July issue of VP along with a set of questions for reflection and/or discussion. If you have found reviews on this site helpful, please consider purchasing a subscription or individual issue in the store. During this MCO 2.0 period, it is better for all people to just stay at home and stay safe with their loved ones. If you ever thinking about what to do while staying safe at home, you can just binge some interesting movies on Netflix. Talking about Netflix, we have one of the perfect and also recommended movies to be watched there. Worry no more, because we already help you to analyze the movie first so that you guys can get the idea of what the movie is about. The movie mentioned is none other than Lupin, that got recently aired on Netflix. Lupin is inspired by Maurice Leblanc's gentleman thief, that is Arsène Lupin. The show follows the adventures of Assain Diop, a master of disguise and all manner of civilized criminal behavior, as he tries to clear his own father's name. Assain and also his father, that is Babacar, moved to Paris from Senegal looking for a better life. Babacar gets work as a chauffeur with the wealthy Pellegrini family. The head of the family, named Hubert, is autocratic and brusque. His wife, named Anne, is kinder, and his daughter, Juliette, shows a teasing interest in the 14-year-old Assain. When a fabulous necklace that once adorned the doomed Queen, Marie Antoinette, and now belonging to the Pellegrini family, goes missing, Babacar is suspected. Even without hard evidence, Babacar is put in prison where he hangs himself, and Assain is orphaned. 25 years later, the Queen's necklace comes up for auction at the Louvre, and who should be in on the proceedings but none other than Assain. The necklace is stolen and the police are running in circles trying to find the thief, who apparently spirited away the necklace under the highest security. Though Police Captain Lagier and Lieutenant Sophia follow conventional leads, their colleague, Guidira, makes the Lupin connection. It is such a classic heist movie device that could get repetitive or even predictable, but luckily, Lupin, with its unique, mercifully short 5-episode first season and its endlessly charming leading man, executes each reveals with a high degree of finesse. Getting fooled is half the fun with a show like this. Lupin has the ability to trick an audience with bits of narrative deception and its not too stressful sense of mischief, The show also boasts an intriguing literary backstory that makes it especially pleasurable to dig into. It is proven that Lupin isn't dark, gritty, or disturbing. But it's not frivolous, either. This particular show has it all, with a plot twist that will keep you on the edge of your seat and eagerly wanting more at the very end. Lupin is such a perfect weekend watch. With a muscular 6'3" frame, gentleman thief Assane Diop, Omar Sy, shouldn't fade into the background. But as a Senegalese immigrant living in Paris, he does. Ever since his father's incarceration accused of stealing a priceless necklace belonging to Marie Antoinette from his employer Mr. Pellegrini, Hervé Pierre, and his father's later death, Assane has known how often black immigrants are overlooked. He uses white folks' racial blind spots as cover to carry out his brazen robberies. And finds inspiration for his heists in the mysteries of the fictional gentleman thief penned by the French novelist Maurice Leblanc, Arsène Lupin. Created by George K. Killing Eve, in collaboration with François Uzan, Family Business, Lupin is an addictive, clever puzzle that combines elements from Luther, Sherlock Holmes, and Inside Man for an engrossing experience. For every answer Kay and Uzan offer in this 10-episode French crime drama, more questions arise. Take the premiere, wherein Assane concocts a plan to steal Marie Antoinette's aforementioned necklace from an auction at the Louvre. To furnish his scheme, he enlists a trio of loan sharks he owes serious money to as a way to cancel his debt. He's also behind in his alimony payments to his ex-wife Claire, Ludivine Sagnier, and missing his visitations with his teenage son Raoul, Aidan Simon. Through flashbacks, Kay and Uzan further reveal Assane's once close relationship to Mr. Pellegrini's daughter Juliette, Clotilde Hesme, and her mother Anne, Nicole Garcia. We wonder how Assane, who's working as a simple janitor, can now craft a near-foolproof ploy to rob the former queen's crown jewels. Where did he find the means to bankroll this job? Why does he trust these abhorrent loan sharks? Lupin is as patient as it is smart, and its plot twists like melted railroad tracks. And yet the narrative train, through some tight savvy editing, always exits on the other side of the tunnel. But we're left wondering how it didn't skip its twisted tracks. See, Assane is as wily as the show's writing. He's a silver-tongued snake charmer who relies on convincing acting, disguises, quick thinking, and his race. When so often questioned by white law enforcement, he implies his accusers' racism to his advantage. Kay and Uzan are also intrigued by other people often ignored. In later episodes, a trio of detectives work to solve the Louvre heist. And though Youssef, Soufiane Guerrab, who we're led to believe is of Middle Eastern descent, could crack the case, his white colleagues on the police force ignore his sound theories. There's also a French journalist, Anne Benoit, a vivid lightning bolt, long dismissed for her age and sex, who plays a pivotal role, too. All of these characters are shadows in an alley blotched by white streetlights. Christophe Nguyen's and Marshall Schmelz's photography, which uses lens flares and foreground shadows to obscure Assane's identity, furthers the series' enigmatic quality. Within the Assane character, Kay and Uzan pile in references to other detective greats. Assane's rough and tumble fighting style, along with his frame, is reminiscent of Luther. The reliance on disguises, and the adrenaline rush from fooling unsuspecting victims, is reminiscent of Sherlock Holmes. And Assane's skillful ruses, acted out through the show's adroit staging, to steal sinful diamonds, recalls Inside Man. But it's telling how these detective narratives are often carried out by cynical protagonists. Not so the case with Omar Sy's performance, which avoids such characteristics with a sincere, soft touch. Sy's Assane is so damn lovable, even when he's clearly wrong, and especially when he ingeniously gets the better of his opponent. Some components wither. Through the first 5 episodes, Assane's Watson-inspired sidekick Benjamin, Antoine Goey, is an afterthought who barely progresses. Likewise, an unreliable police commissioner, Vincent Garanger, overstays his welcome. Nevertheless, in a series this patient, it's difficult to draw any final conclusions until the finale's closing minutes. and when Kay and Uzan excavate Hassane's failed marriage and his suspenseful heists, we're given a well-staged, fast-paced crime thriller that often leaves one awestruck. Lupin is not only totally addictive, it's the first great television show of 2021. By now you've probably either watched Lupin on Netflix or had someone in your life strongly suggest that you make time to watch it. If not, maybe consider getting new people in your life. I'm joking. But not really, because Lupin provides some exquisitely escapist and entertaining drama complete with heists, disguises, multi-layered deceptions, social commentary, and one man upon whom genetics has bestowed many blessings. When we first meet Hassane Diop, Omar Sy, he is working as a janitor at the Louvre where he often stops to stare, awestruck, at the artwork. He's most taken with a diamond necklace called the Queen's Necklace, which was once owned by Marie Antoinette. In the 1990s the necklace was stolen from the wealthy Pellegrini family. Now, having finally recovered it, the family is auctioning it off with the proceeds going to their foundation. Hassane pausing to look at some artwork. What's that you say? You can't see his face that well in this picture? Fear not, my friend, my screenshots from this series may be almost exclusively of his face. Here is Hassane looking at the Queen's necklace. I love the way its reflection is so strong that it almost appears to be hanging on his body. The thing is, though, Hassane has dreams that are bigger than being a night janitor at the Louvre. He has an ex-wife, Ludivine Sagnier, and a son, Aidan Simon, to help support. And soon enough, he convinces some loan sharks with whom he has an overdue payment to defer killing him in order to join him in a plan to steal the necklace during the auction. Then, on the night of the heist things appear to go woefully wrong, think car crashing through the Louvre levels of wrong, but, the thing is, maybe Hassane Diop isn't actually a night janitor at the Louvre or a man who can't repay loan sharks at all. This is his son Raoul, who is, like any teenager worth their salt, very adept at getting a rise out of his father. No, it turns out that Hassane Diop is a man with a very complicated past, an even more complicated present, and ties to both the Pellegrini family and the necklace. When Hassane was about 14, his father, Babakar Fargas Asande, a Senegalese immigrant, worked as a driver for Hubert Pellegrini, Hervé Pierre, until he was accused of stealing the Queen's necklace. Soon after that, Babakar died, leaving Hassane an orphaned ward of the state, his only inheritance the memories of his father and a copy of Arsène Lupin, gentleman burglar, with which young Hassane became enthralled. Young Hassane, Mamadou Haidara, tries to inhale the scent of his father from a pair of his gloves. This kid is also fantastic in his role. I almost wanted more flashbacks so I could see more of him. Now, years later, Hassane considers himself a gentleman thief and master of deception, styled in the image of Arsène Lupin. He's absolutely charming and utterly convincing as he beguiles morally questionable wealthy people, which is, of course, why he's so damn appealing to watch and easy to root for as he cons and steals his way through life. And it's not just the costumes that he wears that disguise him. Hassane's whole body shifts when he becomes a new character. When he's an unassuming IT guy, his shoulders hunch and he looks at people from a deferential stance. When he pretends to be a police officer, he moves with confidence and calm, leaving no room for questioning his motives. He uses illusion, sleight of hand, distraction, and gallons of charm to fool people entirely. I'd argue, though, that he's most interesting when he's himself. He wears a newsboy cap and long wool coat, often paired with more casual clothing, like a hooded sweatshirt and brightly colored sneakers. He moves with a kind of slouching grace and a relaxed control as if everything is going according to his plan. His face alone, which, as I said, his genetically blessed trademark, is enough to charm people into a lot of things, but he also has a glint of mischief that makes it feel like he's letting you in on a secret joke even if, in reality, the joke turns out to be on you. Some of Hassane's various disguises. None of which I described above, but you probably get the picture. Did I tell you that you would not want for photos of his genetically blessed face? The series moves back and forth between the present, the near past, and the distant past, gradually building a fuller and, we presume, more accurate picture of Assane's life and understanding of his growing obsession with certain things. You know what? My fingers are so itchy to tell you more, but I'm not going to because so much of the fun of watching the series are the sudden shifts in direction that it takes. It doesn't even matter if you can predict what some will be beforehand. Events happen out of chronological order, but not in a way that's overly confusing. It's more like every time period allows for a different perspective on the same scenario and causes you to reconsider everything you saw before. And each layer of understanding allows for more things to click into place until you see, for example, the way certain escapades that seemed haphazard and reckless have actually been planned to absolute perfection. Did I sometimes wish that we had time to also get to know a bit more about the other characters? Like the police officers who are chasing him, or Assane's friend from high school who helps him in his schemes. I did. And I still hold out hope that they will get more time in subsequent episodes. There's always room for improvement. And, it's probably for sure a fantasy that one human person could manage to pull off so many disguises, scams, and plans so perfectly and continue to escape victorious and unidentified, but much of the joy in a series like Lupin is in that illusion and the escape it provides. And watching the choreographed escapades is part of what adds enough levity to the show to prevent it from feeling too dark or maudlin. There's a scene in a park where the police think they have a suspect, who is dressed as a bike delivery person, surrounded, but instead the police end up flailing and chasing him across a park as more and more identically dressed cyclists converge on the same spot. It felt a little bit like a Keystone Cops scene. Of course, in the chaos the suspect slips away. In general, the cops are completely stymied by Assane's disguises and capers. I do want to talk to you about the one cop who isn't completely baffled, but I fear it will spoil things, so message me once you've watched it and we'll chat. Even getting a sketch of Assane is nearly impossible because everyone remembers him differently. I love this scene for the careful orchestration and for the nearing slapstick humor of so many identically dressed cyclists converging at just the right moment to foil the cops and let the suspect slip away. It's not explicitly said, but the fact that people don't notice him or remember his face seems to be a clear nod to internal bias and racism. In general, the show addresses racism and classism through small interactions and moments. This isn't a series that's going to have long monologues about systemic racism, but that doesn't make its approach any less effective. Maybe it's more effective. Early on Assane says that, those at the top don't look at the bottom, which he constantly uses to his advantage, but it is also telling when it comes to class and race. You see it in the moment when Mrs. Pellegrini, not recognizing Bob Baker, reaches over to lock her car door. Or when Mr. Pellegrini tells Bob Baker to put the car in the garage so it doesn't get wet, not acknowledging that Bob Baker is soaked to the skin. It's in the way the boys at school poke at Assane and assume he doesn't belong there. You see it in the way that Assane, correctly, explains that people don't see the janitors at the Louvre. They look past them, through them, and around them, but never at them. You hear it when Mr. Pellegrini calls Bob Baker a monkey before playing it off. Or when someone asks Assane if black people can swim. Or the way an auctioneer is surprised by a bidder like you. Or when a wealthy woman cheerfully explains how easy it was to mine and export gems from Belgian Congo. A lot is made about how Assane lives by a code. That he honors his word and is loyal to those he cares about. Okay, so yes, all of that is important. But there is an aspect of Assane that made me want to scream. He is constantly showing up late, or not showing up at all, for his son. His ex-wife is always calling to remind him about things like his son's birthday and then looking mildly annoyed but also patiently exasperated when he fucks things up again. What the fuck? First, ugh. I don't even know what is first. First, Can we start normalizing fathers having their shit together when it comes to their children? Can we stop expecting mothers to do all the emotional labor of remembering birthdays and getting presents and making time for children? And then being all wowed the one time a father shows up at the last minute with some wild plan? Do you know how much energy it takes to keep all of that shit straight in your head? A fucking lot. That's how much. Seriously. And it's not just birthdays and big things. It's keeping track of when your smaller humans last bathed, if they brushed their teeth, checking on their emotional well-being, keeping track of schedules. It's constantly weighing and balancing their needs and your needs. It's balancing short-term gains and long-term goals. And we need to stop having it be acceptable and normal that mothers then also have to do that work for fathers as well. Fathers are grown-ass men who can learn the same skills as mothers. Second of all, Uzan lost his father when he was young, so wouldn't that light a fire under his ass to make sure he's around for his kid? Third of all, I get that he's very busy doing thievery and shit, but his ex-wife is also busy working and raising their child. And Uzan has like 3 computer monitors and appears to have the ability to do all kinds of fancy computer-related stuff, plus he manages to schedule complicated schemes down to the second. But he can't set a damn reminder to buy a present for his kid or pick him up on time. I call bullshit. It's a choice, conscious or not, to be incompetent and let someone else take care of him. It's not charming. I'd be entirely happy to never watch one more scene where a man plays a bumbling dad who means well, but always falls short. Or where the dad is the hero for just showing up and doing the bare minimum. Hey, writers, find another way to humanize men in general and Uzan in particular. Here's Uzan at the moment he realizes he's forgotten all about his son's birthday. Look, I know he's busy being a super cool thief and unraveling important conspiracies and all, but this is highly uncool and totally unacceptable. Phew. Sorry. I just really needed to get that off my chest. Even with that ire, I still really enjoyed the series. Though you should be forewarned that it ends on a humdinger of a cliffhanger. Actually, I don't even know if I'd call it a cliffhanger. It's like it ends in the middle of a scene, which somehow makes it even more frustrating that we have to wait for the next set of episodes to drop. Arsène Lupin is a folktale told to children about a famous master of disguise/gentleman thief, emphasis on the word gentleman because you'll hear it about 1,000,000 times before the season is over. What most people in this universe don't know is that, someone has embodied this folktale and has brought Lupin to life for the most common of movie reasons, revenge. Assane Diop, the now grown-up son of a Senegalese immigrant to France, seeks to clear his father's name more than 2 decades after the latter was accused of stealing a priceless necklace. Through Assane's actions and backstory, the layers of the first season of Lupin begin to unravel. For the most part of it, Lupin is a revenge story, but it's also a tale of love that endures through tough times and dark secrets, and an unfunny comedy flick in its own right. The show references the themes of familial bonds and presses on popular ideals of what a family should be by using its multiple family units on the show as focal points. For a show mostly shot on location in France and played by French-speaking actors, the 5 episodes available on Netflix came in dubbed English format, which makes sense because it should aid non-French speaking people better understanding what's happening on screen. Personally, I struggled with reconciling the lip movement and performance of the actors with the words coming out of my speakers, but that's me. Netflix's decision to dub Lupin is, kinda, appreciated, better than having to religiously read subtitles to flow with the story as is the case with some other Netflix originals. To the avid movie/TV watcher, the motivation behind the story Lupin tells can come across as cliché. We've seen the "you killed my father so I'm coming for your head" plotline so many times on screen, it's becoming more than tiring, but if I'm being honest, I know the revenge genre isn't dying off anytime soon because of the satisfaction that comes with watching the protagonist or, as in this case, anti-hero succeed. At the end of its run, Lupin's first part is missing this climax mostly because its story isn't done yet. The cliffhanger we get is sure to get enough people tuning in when part 2 drops to know if, spoiler, can be found unheard. I for one want to know what comes next, and if our gentleman thief will finally get the closure he deserves and be able to move on from the thrills of his secret life to live a more mundane one with his nuclear family as he's promised 1,000 times. Wishful thinking, I know, these things never go that well, but we'll see how far away from a happy ending it strays by the time it returns. If you ask the French about some of the most iconic literary characters, chances are that the name of Arsène Lupin will come up. Master of deception and disguise, he was first brought to life in 1905 by Maurice Leblanc in a series of short stories, and later inspired many adaptations both on the big screen and on television. Earlier this month, Netflix brought us their most recent take on The Gentleman Burglar with Lupin, starring France's national treasure and renowned actor Omar Sy in the role of Arsène Diop. Our main character is out for revenge after an expensive piece of jewelry that his father supposedly stole from the Pellegrini family makes its way back to the spotlight and is being auctioned to the highest bidder. Arsène takes after the elusive French figure and switches up identities and anagram names at will, 1 minute a nighttime cleaner at the Louvre, the other a wealthy socialite ready to put his money where his mouth is. His ability to think on the spot and talk himself out of risky situations makes the show entertaining and fast-paced, and Sy's dazzling charisma as well as his authenticity will have you rooting for his character to succeed. The series is particularly engaging because of what is at its core, passion. In flashbacks, we can see a younger Arsène, Mamadou Haidara, left to fend for himself after his father gets imprisoned and later ends his life in his jail cell. The boy develops a fascination for the literary figure, taking away many life lessons from him. In fact, Arsène is all Arsène can talk about, mentioning references and plot points from the short stories anytime he gets the chance, which a lot of us can heavily relate to. In more ways than one, the elegant literary figure will bring the characters together. In the present, Arsène uses the character as a way to reconnect with his son Raoul, 18 Simon, with whom he is estranged because of how elusive and unreliable he has been in recent years. And when the boy becomes enthralled with the story, it is a joy to see the both of them bond over it. The series masterfully weaves together the contemporary Parisian setting and at times topical issues that are being tackled nowadays, while intricately hinting at some of Arsène's most famous adventures, bringing life to one of French literature's finest and propelling the audience in the captivating cat-and-mouse game the characters are involved in. Most people have seen a magician perform and have been awed in one way or another by them. Even as someone who knows magic is trickery and misdirection, you still wonder, how did they do that? I remember as a young kid on a field trip, I watched a magician pull my friend's card out of the center of an orange and we couldn't stop talking about it the whole ride back. Being a magician may be just an act, but a good magician's entertainment value is something that really shines on the big screen. Lupin is a new 2-part series on Netflix that was filmed and created with a French cast. The show is loosely based on a fictional book series called Arsène Lupin, Gentleman Burglar by Maurice Leblanc, which followed a gentleman burglar, magician, named Lupin in the 1900s. Throughout the show we see a lot of references to the story and several of the original gimmicks and illusions are recreated by modern-day Lupin, Omar Sy. Lupin is also led by French director Louis Leterrier, who directed fan favorites like Now You See Me, 2013, and The Incredible Hulk, 2008. Leterrier's experience working with the theme of magicians in Now You See Me translates well into Lupin, which merges the world of mystery and drama. The show starts off with a bang and shows the audience a huge heist which targets Marie Antoinette's necklace inside the Louvre. However, no heist is too big for gentleman burglar, magician, Lupin, and he makes this heist of the century seem like another work of art. This heist felt very real and it didn't consist of all the clichés we see in most modern-day heist and robbery films. Illusion and trickery are present throughout the film, but the writers couldn't bring themselves to leave the audience in the dark. The writers put constant flashbacks throughout the show to either explain how Lupin did something or to bridge the gap between Arsène's past before he was Lupin. I appreciated the extra storytelling, but it seemed at times like the flashbacks were almost a crutch used by the writers to clear up plot holes and develop characters that weren't vital to the main story. All in all, the story was pretty well told, and after Part 1's major cliffhanger, I am still looking forward to the release of Lupin Part 2. One of the show's greatest strengths was the connection between certain characters, which made the audience feel gratitude and love for them. This is also done through flashbacks, and one of the characters that really resonates with audiences may be Asane's father. Though he only appears in the show through flashbacks, the audience can still feel the pain he went through, which gives a better understanding as to why Asane is fighting so hard for his father. Diop's friend Jonathan is developed through old flashbacks with Asane at school, and so is Claire. Flashbacks like these were welcoming to me and a much better use than just retelling certain scenes with a different perspective. Asane may be doing illegal things to prove his father's innocence, but you will find yourself cheering for him after seeing what he is up against. The final part I wanted to touch on was how I want more foreign films in this category to show on Netflix. Lupin was dubbed, but I watched the whole thing in French with English subtitles. If it weren't for the obvious language variation and the landmarks present all throughout Paris, I may have even thought this was just another film done by Westerners. The way it was filmed felt like any other show on Netflix and still seemed to come through in terms of bringing something new and fresh to the table. This show really puts French directors and actors in a good light and may help to expunge the idea that Westerners will never appreciate foreign-style cinema. Lupin is full of twists and turns, and after watching Part 1, I think Part 2 will really hit it out of the park and bring the series home. If you can't tell, I think Lupin is a great show and I highly recommend it. Asane Diop, Omar Sy, is one of those janitors. He marvels at the works of art as he mops and dusts. One in particular has caught his eye, a necklace that was once a gift from King Louis XVI to Marie Antoinette. The next time we see Asane, he's talking to his ex Claire, Ludivine Sagnier, about the fact that he has a job. He throws a wad of euros on the table for alimony and child support of their teenage son Rahul, 8 Simon. Then he goes to the gangsters he borrowed the money from: Vincent, Gregory Collin, Kevin, Camille Gwenft, and Rudy, Arthur Choisnet, and, upon threat of being dropped from 10 stories up, tells them how they could score huge. They just need to follow his plan on how to rob Marie Antoinette's necklace when it goes up for auction at the Louvre, keying in on the fact that the low-level employees aren't checked that closely. Asane isn't just interested in the necklace as a big score, though. We flash back to 1995, when Asane was a teenager. His father, Bob Baker, Fargus Asande, was starting work as a driver for the Pellegrini family. Madame Anne Pellegrini, Nicole Garcia, took a liking to Bob Baker and Asane, when Bob Baker was admiring the books in the Pellegrini's library, and told him to take one to give to Asane. Bob Baker chooses Arsène Lupin, gentleman burglar. Monsieur Hubert Pellegrini, Hervé Pierre, on the other hand, treated Bob Baker poorly. When the Marie Antoinette necklace, which the family owned after it passing through numerous hands and being stolen numerous times, goes missing, he accuses Bob Baker of stealing it. The day the necklace goes up for auction, Asane is actually in the audience while the three thugs do the dirty work, as things don't go exactly as planned. For instance, the chloroform spray he had the guys smuggle in doesn't instantly knock out the guards they have to get past. In the audience, Asane sees the Pellegrini's daughter Juliette, Clotilde Hesme, who gave him his first kiss all those years ago when she was an older teenager curious to know what it was like to kiss a black guy. As part of his plan, he ratchets up the bidding and wins the necklace for 60 million euros, with of course no intention of paying. The three thugs double-cross Asane and escape with the necklace, only to get caught as Rudy loses control of the Ferrari he stole. That's when we learn more about Asane than we knew in the first 40 minutes of the first episode. Lupin, created by George K. and François Uzan, is hard to describe without giving away the entire twist of the first episode, so let's just give you a spoiler alert right now. Ready? Ready. What we appreciate about Lupin is that it's not just a show about an expert thief who wants the big score or the one that will send him into retirement. Assain does have a motivation to get out of the business of being a thief, but stealing the Marie Antoinette necklace is more than just making a big score, it's personal. He knows that Monsieur Pellegrini had no evidence that his father stole the necklace 25 years ago. And Bob Acre was so despondent over it, that he hung himself in his prison cell. So Assain has some unfinished business with the Pellegrinis, including Juliette, for whom he still holds a candle. The less said about how the caper was structured and written the better, but for a good reason. It has so many twists and turns along the way, that we imagine the writers had one of those pin and string boards up in the writer's room to make sure they covered all their bases. But when we realize that Assain isn't a guy struggling to make ends meet and figures out that he can steal the necklace, our view of the entire first episode changes. The twist isn't exactly the Sixth Sense level shocking, but it was enough of a surprise to make us view the scenes before it differently upon a second viewing. We know that Assain has basically followed the stories of Lupin, gentleman burglar, to figure out how to hide in plain sight, have others do his bidding, and stay above suspicion while reaping the spoils of his plans. Now we'll be seeing Assain use his contacts to figure out how Hubert Pellegrini factored into his father's death, likely holding the necklace as collateral. So the season starts with a caper, but will end with the unraveling of a larger mystery. That's a smart move on the part of Kay and Uzan. Omar Sy is great as Assain, able to hide as a humble custodian and play a bold business magnate with equal élan. Every other character around Assain seems to be built as caricatures that will do his bidding, but it seems like Claire was an intellectual match for him at one time, as was Juliette. So we should be able to see more of both relationships as the series goes on. But the first episode was exciting enough, with more than enough twists, to keep us interested. Arsène Lupin is a character with a great deal of currency to the French. Created by author Maurice Leblanc in 1905, this master thief turned detective, a master detective, has anchored many short stories and films. None of this character's history may be known to an American audience as they contemplate hitting play on Netflix's new series Lupin, starring Omar Sy, The Intouchables, as a contemporary spin on the character. It shouldn't stop anyone from checking out a propulsive and cleverly made piece of work about one great heist and its ongoing aftermath. Sy, here, plays Assain Diop, a Senegalese immigrant whose father died as a result of a false accusation, working as a chauffeur for a wealthy Parisian family. This unlucky fellow was accused of stealing a necklace in their care, one that had belonged to Marie Antoinette. That this name suggests overtones of indolence and selfishness seems no mistake. Assain, who as a young man was given a Lupin book by his father, sets out to use craft and wit to claim the necklace and to do damage to the greedy and thuggish family, led by a patriarch played by Hervé Pierre. Perception lies at the center of this story. Assain has trained himself to be a master of disguise, but he's also unnoticed by a society that looks right past him. It's a sharp way to ensure that the changes in the character are more than cosmetic. Further, treating the Lupin myth as inspirational to Assain rather than literally true grounds the story in a sort of reality, as do flashbacks to Assain's friendship with the wealthy family's daughter, Clotilde Hesme, and the present-day strained relationship with his ex-wife, Ludivine Sagnier. With this emotional heft serving as ballast, the extraordinary feats of Lupin, including the jewel heist depicted in the show's first episode, sing all the more. That first episode, along with the next two, was directed by Louis Leterrier, while Marcela said handles the final two. By the time the series gets to its cliffhanger fifth and final, for now, episode, the show's all-out twistiness, as well as the grit of its leading man, recall Bodyguard, that cliffhanger will leave any viewer who's taken the ride eager for more. There are scores of film actors working today in what the US smugly refers to as foreign language films who are deserving of stardom on the international stage, and Omar Sy might be at the top of that list. The French actor began his career in 2000 with a string of appearances and voice roles in television and short films, and he gained notoriety in France in 2010 as half of a comedy sketch duo in a series called Save des Emissions. His true breakout was Intouchables, 2011, a hilarious and poignant dramedy about an unlikely friendship between an ex-con and a quadriplegic millionaire. SY is transcendent in this film, absolutely bursting with life and energy, and his efforts were rewarded when he became the first black man to win a César Award. International fame, it seemed, should follow, and indeed over the next few years SY made his English-language debuts in the X-Men, Jurassic, and Transformers franchises. None of those roles exactly called for an actor of Sy's talents, though. I'm not even sure he had any lines as the mutant bishop in X-Men, Days of Future Past. His appearances in these massively recognizable franchises, frankly, are forgettable, which plays out as a near impossibility after seeing how utterly unforgettable SY is in the likes of Intouchables. This is not to say that becoming a household name in America is tantamount to having a successful acting career, nor that SY should at all be faulted for appearing in these big-budget blockbusters. Predictably, though, Hollywood is a beneficiary of his Intouchables work in a way that excludes the actor entirely. The film was remade as The Upside in 2017, starring Kevin Hart in Sy's role, a hollow retread of the original that went on to gross $122 million. Sy's latest role is the title character of Lupin, a modern-day update of the adventures of gentleman thief Arsène Lupin. Occupying a similar territory in the French cultural consciousness as Sherlock Holmes occupies in the UK, Lupin is a far cry from the cardboard cutouts offered to SY by Hollywood of late. He's vastly intelligent, devious, stylish, and charming. The burglaries he enacts draw from this well of talents, meaning it's often Lupin's personality that makes him so effective at what he does. Lupin's modern update provides a further twist. SY plays Assane Diop, a Parisian who idolizes the fictional Lupin to the point of essentially becoming him. "I am Lupin," he declares emphatically at the end of the first episode. As a vehicle for SY, Lupin is an unabashed success. His character's family plays a major role in the proceedings, both family past, his father, who was framed for a jewel heist decades ago, and present, he has a son with his ex-wife, both of whom are at risk due to Assane's crimes. Much as Watson grounds Sherlock for us, this thread of family grounds the more fantastical elements of Assane's life. The over-the-top heists are often paired with more believable real-world consequences, particularly in the season's fourth and best episode. But primarily this gives SY the chance to run the emotional gamut, and as with Intouchables, Lupin is magnetic whenever he's on screen. The show's plotting is at times weaker than its lead performance, though, and the holes reveal themselves if you delve too critically into any of the various heists. A crucial element of the first episode's heist relies on a trash can in a crime scene being overlooked, which in turn relies on a series of events that Assane could hardly have predicted. That said, this genre has often prioritized stylized fun over plot details. The casino heist in Ocean's 11 leans on a similar series of outlandish conveniences, but it's still a blast to go along for the ride. Lupin, despite the occasional contrivance, skates by with a similar suaveness. One has to ask if Lupin would be as strong without SY in the lead. While he's not quite carrying the show on his back, there are plenty of other interesting characters here, particularly a disgraced former journalist played by Anne Benoit. It's certainly true that Sy's captivating, easygoing charm is the real draw here. The recently renewed show hints at a much more self-serious plotline for the second season, which one would hope doesn't detract from the less serious instances of classy thievery. In its best moments, Lupin's fast-paced heist sequences manage to suggest real stakes without sacrificing that carefree atmosphere. Notably, the Netflix series became the first French series to hit the streamer's top 10 list in the US. That probably marks this as the strongest opportunity yet for Western audiences to be exposed to SY, as those audiences would be forgiven for missing him off to the side in X-Men or Jurassic World or Transformers. Omar SY is not an off-to-the-side actor, and in Lupin he's front and center where he belongs. Like an action hero swooping in to save the day, Lupin arrived at a dire moment. When the latest twist on Marcel Leblanc's classic gentleman thief character Arsène Lupin hit Netflix, on January 8, the US was reeling from an insurrection amid the deadliest stage of the pandemic. It was not yet clear when the vaccine rollout would accelerate or whether we'd see further disruptions to the peaceful transfer of the presidency. Those lucky enough to have our health, yet too distant from medicine or government to do much except wait, were badly in need of distraction. Car chase, exploding boat, blockbuster spectacle level distraction. The kind of distraction that comes with salty snacks, Dolby sound and an excuse to switch off those smartphones. Unfortunately, it wasn't safe to set foot in any movie theater at the time. So Lupin brought the cinema to us. Sure, there are plenty of big-budget TV shows these days, shows with Oscar-winning stars and flawless production design and artistic ambitions to match. Platforms like Disney Plus and HBO Max have been downloading Hollywood franchises to the small screen at a staggering rate. Yet television still offers very few programs that are cinematic in precisely the same way as Lupin, which returns on June 11th with the final half of its first season. With its slick visuals, dazzling action scenes and charismatic star, Omar Sy, it's a French-language crime drama that reminds me of the stylish, heart-pounding heist thrillers, like Ocean's 11 and Le Cercle Rouge, that I devoured during lockdown. No wonder it was, according to Netflix, watched by some 76 million households within 28 days of its release, a smash hit even in the notoriously subtitle-averse states. Those who've yet to tune in should know that it isn't a straightforward adaptation of Leblanc's books. Set in present-day Paris, Lupin casts Sy, a Caesar-winning French actor of West African heritage who is best known in the US for his roles in the X-Men and Jurassic Park franchises as Assane Diop, a Senegalese immigrant who grew up idolizing the fictional thief. When we meet him, he has spent something like 25 years amassing the necessary extra-legal skills and tools to avenge the death of his beloved father Bob Baker, Fargus Asande, in 1995, and has finally found the perfect opportunity to do so. His target is Bob Baker's former employer, the nefarious business titan Hubert Pellegrini, a perfectly slimy Hervé. Assane's outlaw existence doesn't leave much room for a life outside of work, but creators George K. and François Uzan find believable ways to include relationships deep enough to reveal their hero's fundamental goodness. At 14 years old, his son Raoul, Aiton Simon, is the same age Assane was when he lost Bob Baker. For the sake of safety and because, despite their obvious feelings for each other, his parents aren't together, Raoul lives with his mother, Assane's long-suffering high school sweetheart Claire, the wonderful Ludivine Sagnier, recently seen in The Young Pope and the New Pope. The couple's old pal Benjamin, Antoine Goey, a jeweler, serves as Assane's accomplice and confidant. As the first season progresses, Lupin amasses enough supporting characters, from Pellegrini's beautiful, rebellious daughter, Clotilde Hesme, to a handful of cops with various allegiances, to fuel several seasons' worth of capers. Indeed, nested within Assane's all-consuming quest for vengeance is a series of smaller plots and adventures. This is a smart way of building action into every episode of a show that thrives on it. Lupin delivers all the sumptuously shot high-speed chases, explosions, heists and glittering set pieces you could want, many of them set at grand Parisian landmarks like the Louvre and the Théâtre du Châtelet. Although Kay and Uzan don't dwell on politics or identity, there's resonance in the implications they seed throughout the story, about how the Pellegrinis of the world exploit the Diops, about how easy it is for a black man to disguise himself as a low-wage worker in a society where so many barely look at such people. It's these ideas that make the show more like a 70s political thriller than like most current superhero or even James Bond movies. It is that rare and precious thing, an action blockbuster for grown ups. In fairness, the storytelling in Lupin doesn't have quite the same taut precision as, say, The Parallax View. A storyline in the first half of the season suffered from the ridiculously broad characterization of a disgraced female reporter, who seemed to have been beamed in from a totally different kind of show. A cliffhanger that could have been resolved within the first episode of Part 2 instead takes twice as long to wrap up. Even at its weakest, though, the show is so much more exciting than almost anything else on TV. Its glitz and gloss are immersive, its pace propulsive, its twists thrilling. Assane's intricate schemes unfurl like delightful magic tricks or Rube Goldberg machines. Many episodes replay these setups in order to reveal all the moving parts, rather than puzzle boxes designed to keep viewers confused. None of this would work without such a captivating central performance. Only an actor who seems equally at home attending gala events in five-figure tuxes, fighting off bad guys with his bare hands and disappearing into an endless series of disguises could sell a character as charming and ingenious as Assane. Though his talents certainly aren't limited to this kind of role, 43-year-old SY has emerged as one of the most versatile male action stars of his cohort, one who radiates more warmth than Tom Hardy, more intellect than Ryan Reynolds, more physical strength than Tom Hiddleston or Anthony Mackie, more sophistication than John Cena or Jason Momoa or, really, any of the Chris's. Following the success of Lupin, and with Jurassic World, Dominion due out in 2022, Americans will surely be seeing plenty of SY on the big screen in the coming years. That's a wonderful thing. But as TV increasingly overtakes film as our most vital form of audiovisual distraction, I hope we'll also start to see more shows like Lupin. Netflix series, particularly those that magically appear on its top 10 list, can be extremely hit and miss. Lupin, a French-language series from Georges K. and François Uzan that dropped in January 2021, is very much the former. The series is slated for 10 episodes. We have the first 5 now, and the second 5 are due to drop in the summer of 2021. The gist is this: Assane Diop, Omar SY, who you might remember as Barry from Jurassic World but certainly won't from his small role in X-Men, Days of Future Past, is a thief. But he's also what you'd call a gentleman thief, and one who's mirrored his life after Arsène Lupin, a gentleman thief in a series of stories born in the early 1900s from French author Maurice Leblanc. Diop and his father, Bob Baker, immigrated from Senegal. Bob Baker worked as a chauffeur and assistant for a rich and powerful man, who ultimately accused Bob Baker of stealing a necklace once owned by Marie Antoinette, worth millions. Bob Baker hanged himself in prison. And 25 years later, Assane sets out to uncover what really happened and to avenge his father's death. You don't have to be familiar the stories of Lupin, I wasn't, or know any French at all. I have enough to be pleasant on an Air France flight, to enjoy the hell out of the series and be eagerly awaiting the second half. There's a good chance that if you've seen the trailer for Lupin, you've seen it dubbed in English. Which is what we're giving you above. And that's a shame. Because like La Casa de Papel or Parasite, the language gives another layer of depth to what you're watching. The character Lupin was French. Assane Diop is decidedly French. Same goes for Omar SY and every other actor and character in the 5 episodes thus far. Overdubbing Lupin in English makes it feel like an Ocean's 12 or a spin-off of the Thomas Crown Affair, and maybe a little James Bond and Sherlock Holmes. But that doesn't do justice to anyone. Lupin stands on its own here. And that's why we're drawn in from the start, with a good-looking janitor named Perrin Louis doing his janitorial thing at the Louvre. He's also obviously casing the joint, admiring the artwork. That's especially true of the Queen's necklace, which recently surfaced some 25 years after having disappeared following a burglary at compound of the Pellegrini family. The necklace was believed to have been stolen and dismantled. But now that it's been found, it's going to be shown at the Louvre for a couple weeks, and then auctioned to fund a new Pellegrini Foundation. The necklace is expected to fetch something like $20 million. And Louis Perrin, which is an anagram for Arsène Lupin, if you haven't noticed already, is going to steal it. That's good, because Louis Perrin also owes money to some really unpleasant people, and he just gave what he had to his ex-wife, Claire, swimming pool's Ludivine Sagnier, as alimony and child support. Along with a cleverly and discreetly folded origami flower, which simultaneously shows you the current state of their relationship, as well as where it's ultimately headed. Louis needs the henchman's help to steal the necklace, and they're plenty willing to get a cut of that $20 million. Meanwhile, we start getting the backstory in flashbacks. Bob Baker and Assane, who we now know in adulthood as Louise Perrina, are seen in Paris in 1995. Bob Acre has started work as a driver for Monsieur Hubert Pellegrini and spots Madame Anne Pellegrini, Nicole Garcia, having car trouble in the rain. She doesn't recognize him, though, and immediately locks her door, because it's a nice older black man offering to help and must certainly be a threat. Bob Acre explains that he just started as her husband's chauffeur, and then she recognizes him. You could maybe chalk that up to seeing someone out of context. We've all done it. But that's our first taste of the all too realistic racial, and immigrant, issues that still abound today. And while they don't play a huge role in Lupin, they're always lingering. Subtle, but very much there. He's nice, but what does he want? Bob Acre gets the Volkswagen Rabbit convertible started again and insists that he drive Madame home. It is, after all, what he does. You know what your father is? She asks Asane. A gentleman. And she's right. Fargus Asande plays the character brilliantly. He's a man who will give anything for his teenage son to have a better life, which is why they're in Paris to begin with. He's world-weary but hard-working. And he introduces us into the world of Arsène Lupin, gentleman thief, and Asane is immediately enamored by the character. You immediately see the relationship of Bob Acre and Asane mirrored in Asane and his own teenage son, Raoul. Asane was about the same age as Raoul when we see him first meet the Pellegrini daughter Juliette, Clotilde Hesme. She's lounging at the pool and smoking cigarettes when the younger Asane inches into the water, permitted by Madame to take a dip. She asks Asane if what she heard about black people true black people can't swim. If he proves her wrong, I'll kiss you. A real kiss. Not like your mother's. Okay. So maybe those racist undertones aren't quite so subtle. And let's toss in some classism for good measure. Asane says that of course he can swim. He slips into the and sets off toward Juliet and barely manages to dog paddle his way there. He gets his kiss, though, which only makes the whole thing worse. These flashbacks are brilliantly worked into the current time story. We get this awful scene with Juliet while she's simultaneously descending the steps at the Louvre to auction off the necklace. She's even more stunning 25 years later. This is where I start to think that maybe the 25-year math doesn't add up, but I'll let that go, and Asane, seated in the crowd, watches her the whole way down. He's not there as Asane, however. Or even as Louise Perrina. He's now there as Paul Sernine, yes, another Lupin anagram, and he's bidding on the necklace as part of the scheme to steal it. This frames the rest of the first half of Lupin. The 5 parts tell their own bits of the tale, interwoven with context from the past, and how everyone fits into the present. Asane and Claire met at school where he was the black, immigrant new kid, and he rescued her from their classmates' unwanted advances. The inspector from Original Disappearance from the Necklace plays an integral role in discovering the larger plot 25 years later. Same goes for a journalist who was trying to expose the Pellegrini family a quarter century ago, only to fail and lose her career in the process. It all comes together in the 5th episode, which also cliffhangs its way into the second half of Lupin coming in the summer. We're not left wanting, however. Each episode has been carefully balanced with exposition and present-day action. And while you go through the whole thing with the understanding that everything's probably going to work out fine for our gentleman thief Asane/Perrina/Sernine every time he's in danger, this is a series, after all, and nobody's going to kill off the protagonist. It's still a great ride. So much so that it's worth watching a second time, because there's a lot going on. At time perhaps a little too much. There are a lot of characters in the 2 time periods, and Asane's multiple names don't alleviate that confusion any. There are the family dynamics with the Pellegrinis, and with Asane and Claire, and Asane and Raoul. There's the aging Inspector Dumont and the younger cops who are now tasked with finding Asane and the necklace. Juliet, perhaps, is still lingering. And then there's Asane and Monsieur Hubert Pellegrini. An unstoppable force versus an immovable object. Sometimes one wins out. But it wouldn't surprise if the impending collision causes destruction for both of them. This January, Netflix revealed to an unsuspecting world the latest and most cunning of its original programming. It stalked hit sensations such as Money Heist and The Queen's Gambit in the shadows, eventually surpassing them in projected views, 70M+, and thus gaining the upper hand in the cadence of its titular master of all things sneaky. No, it's not a new season of Selling Sunset, it is, of course, the comedic French-language crime thriller Lupin, starring the irresistible Omar Sy of films such as the hot water bottle masterpiece Intouchables, 2011, for which he became the first ever black recipient of the César Best Actor Award, Samba, 2014, and Jurassic World, 2015. Lupin, created by François Uzan and British writer George K., takes the eminent French tales of Maurice Leblanc's 1905 creation Arsène Lupin, gentleman cambrioleur, gentleman burglar, a sort of twisted, Frenchified Sherlock Holmes, and produces a modern-day Parisian narrative centered around second-generation Senegalese immigrant, and Arsène Lupin fanatic, Assane Diop, S.Y. Over 5 episodes at approximately 45 minutes each, we follow Diop's footsteps in a quest to unearth and avenge the mysterious death of his father, during which we see him implement methods of deception and investigation inspired by Leblanc's novels. Lupin isn't Netflix's greatest ever series, but for a crime mystery, it's a good one, punctured with pockets of that famous French wit. The jewel in the pilfered crown is Sy's reliably captivating performance, in which he hammers home yet another example of his indomitable charm, palpability of emotional depth, and an ingrained natural ability to animate the two-dimensional text of a script with penetrating sarcasm and flawless timing. The outcome is the creation a caricature the audience has no choice but to succumb to with a laugh they don't want people to see. However, while Sy is undeniably the show's blazing and obscuring star, his success is bolstered by solid performances from fellow cast members including Ludivine Sagnier, who plays Claire, Assane's ex-partner and mother of their son, with both tenderness and fiery resolve, Vincent Garanger as the corrupt yet simultaneously pathetic detective Gabrielle Dumont, and Hervé Pierre, who brings a palpably slimy quality to wealthy public figure cum criminal Hubert Pellegrini. Lupin also showcases standout portrayals from young rising stars including Aidan Simon, Mamadou Haidara, and Ludmila Makowski. The show similarly impresses in its visuality. Straying from the usual romanticist and artistically stylized images of Paris that we often see in films and TV series, Lupin uses drone shots and shadowy low-key lighting to produce a quintessentially opulent Netflix aesthetic that's reliably easy on the eye. It's slick, it's cool, it's dramatic, and thus it's absolutely in keeping with both the mysterious ambience of its narrative and the polish of its street-smart protagonist. At times, this Netflix aesthetic may look a little too high budget, and too clean to communicate a back-alley portrayal of crime in Paris. However, Lupin is no back-alley story, rather, the gentleman cambrioleur hides unremittingly in plain sight, within the shiny exterior of France's upper echelons. Yes, postcard portraits of the Eiffel Tower are replaced with more realist walks along the Seine under clusters of thick grey cloud, or meetings within the dreary barricades of the city's peripheral banlieue estates, yet, somehow, the illustrious magic of France's metropole nonetheless glistens through. Lupin's plot itself may not be wholly unique, the master of disguise conman figure is by no means an untrodden path. Rather, unlike its crafty hero, it is something recognizable from films such as The Mask of Zorro, 1998, Ocean's 11, 2001, and Sherlock Holmes, 2009, to name a few. However, Lupin's redeeming feature is its refreshing refusal to center the story around a white, middle-class male, inverting the identity of Leblanc's hero to present one with immigrant heritage. Assane is by no means the perfect role model. As a father he is flawed at times, yet it is important, taking France's tumultuous history with race relations, that a black man, a second-generation immigrant, living in Europe's second most multicultural city, is portrayed in such a way that he can be idolized, rather than traditional representations that have a tendency to lean into stigmas of either threat or victim. Lupin proves an awareness of France's racial hostilities. The context of Assane's pursuit revolves around the needless sacrifice of his father Bob Acre's life as part of a criminal blueprint laid down by Paris's wealthy white elite. However, the true essence of the show is a simple story, one of an ordinary Frenchman, real-life ordinary, not white, centrist ordinary, striving to manage his ordinary, imperfect family life, while possessing an extraordinary talent. Lupin may not be the most groundbreaking crime thriller you'll see this year. However, if Netflix's promised trademark gloss and exhilaration doesn't quite seize your Friday night attention, the uniqueness of the show's hero, emboldened by Omar Sy's immutable charm, soon will. I'll be truthfully honest with you, I wasn't planning to write a review on this, but after watching the first series, in one sitting, it would be insulting not to. First and foremost, let me give you a quick background breakdown. This is a French series, yep, you heard me right. It's not in English, but before you run away, you have to give it a chance because it's worth every minute. Okay, listen, remember when we said that Parasite was a must-see movie even though it was in South Korean and had subtitles? Well, it went on to win many Oscars and was dubbed the film of the century, so if that is not a reason to broaden your viewing preference, then I do not know for you. And if you haven't watched it yet, you must add it to your list immediately. Back to my point, just because it's not in English, it doesn't mean you should give it a pass, and this series is certainly one not to skip. Also, please watch it in French with the English subtitles to ensure the best experience, because if you don't, you are uncultured, and I will be judging, but also, no. The series is inspired by the short stories of Arsène Lupin, a famous figure of French detective literature curated by writer Maurice Leblanc. His works are famous amongst the French, and he is recognized in some European countries as well, such as the UK, if you can remember your GCSE days. This particular series is inspired by Gentleman Thief, and for those who don't know the story, we learn more about what happens in the book through the adventures of the protagonist Assane Diop, played brilliantly by Omar Sy. Assane is gifted this novel by his father as a child and grows up appreciating the contents of his book into his adulthood. Inspired by Lupin's ways and ability to finesse, and almost shapeshift amongst society, Assane meticulously studies and imitates his character and applies it in the real world. Right, background done, let's get into it. Whew. What can I say? I cannot fault the series one bit so far. I say so far because series 2 is pending, though it is confirmed. Whoop whoop, and I honestly pray with every bone in my body that the standard is maintained because this has the potential to be the series of 2021. That is a bold statement coming from me when we're less than 2 weeks into the new year, but I am confident it will deliver. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I mean, I couldn't even if I wanted to because the series is packed with action from the start. I wasn't even 10 minutes in before I realized that the series was like crack to me. Disclaimer, I don't do crack PLS. Anyways, hooked isn't the word, and I don't seem to be alone, as everyone, literally, everyone, I know that has watched it has watched series 1 in one sitting too. TBH, it's only 5 episodes long and all under 45 minutes, I wish there were more episodes, but we don't rush excellence over here, so it's easy to do, but all credit goes to the story, the acting, and the phenomenal writing skills of George K. and François Uzan, who are, BTW, goats for this. Like really. Come up to the stage and collect your accolades right now. Of course, we must not ignore the brilliance that is Omar Sy, who encapsulates his character so well as he takes us through glimpses of Assane's personal, public, and past life in the opening scenes and takes us on the journey of his life. I think what I liked most about this series is the way that we are dropped in the action from the start and drip-fed the background information later on in the episode. In less than 10 minutes, we, the viewers, feel like we are in on the biggest heist when Assane breaks down his plan to steal the crown jewels at the Louvre, the very place he works, or so we think. As we become more attuned to his ways and motives, we realize that Uzan is nothing less than a genius. How he plans to pull it off is nothing but brilliance. It's juicy, exhilarating, and not predictable in the slightest, which I love. So many times, I was thinking oh shit only to say oh rah, a few moments later, very London of me. Honestly, when I say I was involved, please believe no one could distract me, and I'm glad to report that I was never disappointed. There are a few scenes that highlight his brilliance, notably, the museum scene, the park scene, and the prison scene. Don't worry, I am not going to spill any beans, so you're just going to have to watch it for yourself, in French, of course, because the twists and turns will have you glued to the screen. That's all for now. I cannot wait for the second series, and I am so happy that it has been confirmed. I really hope it continues to maintain the standards it has already set, because I am not ready to let this one go. Hey, it's Laura here, back on the Gatsby app. I was searching for a good show this week and came across Lupin showing now on Netflix. On the app it's been given some decent scores. Rotten Tomatoes it has 95%, with a 78% score by the audience, 7.7 on IMDb, and an overall rating of A within the Gatsby app. The summary says, inspired by the adventures of Arsène Lupin, gentleman thief Uzan Diop sets out to avenge his father for an injustice inflicted by a wealthy family. So, to be honest, from the outlook it's probably not a show that I would be really eager to jump into, but oh, my god. I loved this show. There's only 5 episodes though, as you can see, and you know you enjoy something when you are so annoyed it's ended and there's not a second season ready to jump straight into. Pay attention, as the series has subtitles and the plot is clever and fast, you have zero time to even check a text or you miss something. I think if I was slightly distracted and not giving it my full attention, I could decide quite quickly not to continue watching, as I'd just be very lost. But when you give it 100% attention and follow every small detail, it is simply stunning. I think what I liked about it, is that it makes the audience feel smart. When we work out the small clues given to us, and the lightning bolt strikes, it's a really good feeling. And this show has done it better than many others. When I worked out, before we were told, might I add, that a character Uzan is playing, is an anagram of Arsène Lupin, I was like yeah, and there's such an awesome montage sequence at the end of the first episode, where we are informed on all the small details as to how Uzan has committed the first crime of stealing the Queen's necklace from the Louvre. It's a bit Ocean's 11 style, but done better I think. Putting the $20 million necklace in a smelly baby diaper in the garbage bin, yes, genius. It's slick, it's stylish, it's clever, and we just love the main character, as Uzan is the perfect mix of the gentleman he describes himself as, and some shades of bad boy. He reminded me a bit of Robin Hood, because he commits crimes and does things that aren't necessarily good, but his morals are in place and he's committing these crimes for good reason. His sense of injustice is so strong, just like Robin Hood robs from the rich to give to the poor. And we all love these kinds of characters. Omar Sy is great in it. I remember watching him in Untouchable and thinking then he was brilliant in that, another real heartwarming film. If you haven't seen it, then you should. If James Bond was French, this would definitely be his next role. Lupin in my opinion has everything. The structure of plot also works well as the main story keeps going throughout the 5 episodes, which is basically how Uzan will avenge his father's death, but each episode has smaller subplots which help move the main story along, with twists and flashbacks to help us understand certain parts. It has exciting heists, smart robberies, disguises, kidnappings, heartbreak, scandal, shock, father-son relationships. There's a really touching part when he hands the Book of Lupin to his son, echoing what his father had done for him years previously. It's also got childhood love and class wars play a strong theme throughout. So, the only thing I didn't dig, was that it was only 5 episodes. When is a series ever that short? I guess when they're really good. And how it ends on a cliffhanger, so you just need to know what happens next, but I guess like everyone else, I will have to wait. Hurry up, Netflix. My partner watched this with me and loved it equally as much, so I definitely think it's one for both the guys and girls. Apparently the book on which the series was based, Arsène Lupin Gentleman Burglar from 1905, has shot to the top of Amazon France's book sales, and this show has already taken over The Queen's Gambit with 70 million views. So what are you waiting for? I can't be any clearer, you need to watch it. I've already recommended Lupin to loads of people, even my mum and dad, but there's still a few more I can suggest it to here on the Gatsby app right now, so I'm gonna make sure they take a look and have a browse of it on here. I hope you've enjoyed my review today and hope you'll take a look at the app to see what to watch next. Please do share and leave any comments or questions. I will see you very soon with another review. Bye for now. The Greatest Trick by Lupin, a new French series on Netflix, is disguising substantiveness in plain sight. The show, created by the British showrunner George Kay and inspired by the beloved French character Arsène Lupin, packages over 115 years of inspiration, dating back to the character's invention by writer Maurice Leblanc in 1905, in a slick, swift escape easily binged in a day. Its star, the French actor Omar Sy, towers over his scene partners, perpetually unreadable yet brimming with charisma. His character, Assane Diop, is a con man with a heart of gold, able to turn his outsized presence into an uncatchable master of deception. The show is slight, 5 episodes of about 43 minutes, with more to come this year, and without much press in the US, yet a week after its release is the second most watched program on Netflix, and the streamer's first French program to crack the top 10 in the American market. It's currently the streamer's most watched global program, and the company has now stated that it's set to reach 70 million households within the first month, which will make it bigger than both Bridgerton and The Queen's Gambit. It's not hard to see why. Lupin combines the verve of Ocean's 11 with the thrilling implausibility and cultural lore of the first national treasure. Where Nicolas Cage stole the Declaration of Independence, Assane begins the series with a similarly outlandish plan: steal Marie Antoinette's necklace, lost for 25 years and slated for auction, from the Louvre. But Assane, it's quickly revealed, is more cunning than anyone around him assumes. He's a devout fan of Arsène Lupin, the quintessential French gentleman thief replete with a monocle and a top hat, who has fingered through a copy of his debonair escapades so many times the pages are worn. Sy is a fan as well, and the series arose in part from the freedom afforded by his César Award for the Intouchables and Hollywood career to select his dream role. If I were British, I would have said James Bond, but since I'm French, I said Lupin, he told the New York Times. Between montages of his shockingly low-budget heist plan, which, ultimately, is a bit of a red herring, you're not watching to see if he gets the necklace, the show peels back the layers of Assane's motivation. 25 years earlier, his father Bob Acre, Fargus Asande, an immigrant from Senegal hired as a chauffeur for a wealthy white Parisian family, was framed for stealing the necklace. He died by suicide in prison, leaving an orphaned Assane with a copy of the Lupin stories and a drive for vengeance. The series was always likely to be a hit in France, where the character of Lupin is a Sherlock Holmes-type cultural touchstone. A popular TV series that bore his name ran from 1971 to 1974, and a 2004 film starred Romain Duris. Lupin has also served as inspiration for a lineage of Japanese creators. The manga artist Kazuhiko Kato, known by the pen name Monkey Punch, created an ongoing anime series based Lupin's grandson, Lupin 3, which has itself inspired several anime adaptations, including the legendary director Hayao Miyazaki's debut feature Lupin 3, The Castle of Cagliostro. Though a largely unfamiliar character to the US, and despite Americans' general reluctance to watch with subtitles, Lupin's success isn't entirely unprecedented. Netflix automatically plays the dubbed English version, and Lupin follows in the footsteps of breakout global hits, such as Money Heist, Far and away Netflix's most popular global show, viewed by 65M households when its fourth season dropped in April 2020, though it's worth noting that as of last year, Netflix counted a view as any account watching over 2 minutes of a program. But the biggest draw, of course, is The Gentleman Con. Lupin won't win any awards for its production or writing, but any viewer knows that's not the point. The hook is in the Hollywood slickness of assane scheming, and the illusion of dauntless competency under pressure. It's a tried and true TV genre. Think the icy schemer Tommy Shelby at his prime in the British gangster series Peaky Blinders, another bombastic global Netflix hit, or Idris Elba in Luther, perhaps Assane's clearest TV antecedent. Still, Assane is no tech-laden Bruce Wayne. Assane is decidedly minimalist in his schemes, as he harnesses the potential of the street, masquerading as a food delivery biker, for example, or infiltrating small-scale drug rings, and eludes authorities through a series of distractions and faultless charm. He handles the fault lines of race in French society with the same dexterity, able to wield his presence as a 6'2" in black man as alternately magnet or cloak. Posing as a member of the Louvre's custodial staff, he's invisible, able to scope out his target with minimal attention. As an ultra-rich tech entrepreneur at the necklaces auction, his singularity as the only black face in the room becomes an insurance policy. Noticed by everyone, he's not suspected for the theft. It's a refreshing twist on an old-fashioned character within a long-standing genre, one that takes little to surrender to. Each episode concludes with a kick, in which Assane reveals his hand to reframe the episode's prior events as a cascade of aspirational calm, expert planning, and total control. Lupin's greatest talent, without a doubt, was to always be one step ahead. Assane narrates over the first reveal, quoting the century-old source material over a montage of his deception, the allure of an all-knowing, sublime, mutable thief transcending both time and language. There is something alluring about heist movies, and for the longest time, I didn't know why. I am a huge fan of the Mission Impossible movies because it features some of the most outrageous physical stunts ever performed in the history of filmmaking. I love Steven Soderbergh's Ocean's trilogy and Logan Lucky because they've such great ensemble casts and the heists are executed so smoothly, even their fumbles are McCann. The Doom movies started off as heist movies and then kind of became shit. Everyone's favorite money heist? I didn't make it past the second episode. The Edgar Wright directorial that shall remain unnamed because of its now maligned cast is crisp. Christopher Nolan's Inception is something else entirely, but still a good heist film. But it was only after watching Lupin, Netflix's peace offering to the French after making Emily in Paris, I understood why this genre. It's about fighting classism. Lupin Part 1, Season 1 has been divided into 2 5-episode runs, and this is Part 1, is directed by Louis Leterrier, Marcela said, and Ludovic Bernard. It's written by George K., François Uzan, Florent Meyer, Tigran Rossini, Marie Roussan, and Maurice Leblanc. The music is by Matthew Lamali, cinematography by Christophe Nuyens and Marshall Schmelz, editing by Jean-Daniel Fernandez-Condez, Richari Marizzi, and Audrey Simonod, production design by Françoise Dupertuis, costume design by Olivier Birio, hair and makeup by Laurence Grosjean and Valerie Chappelle, sound design by John Gok, visual effects supervision by Matthew Legros, and stunt coordination by Michel Bouis. It features Omar Sy, Vincent Lundez, Antoine Goey, Soufiane Guerrab, Clotilde Hesme, Hervé Pierre, Ludivine Sagnier, Aidan Simon, Shireen Boutella, Johan Dionnet, Vincent Garanger, and Benoit, and more. It tells the story of Assane Diop, Omar, a gentleman thief who is greatly inspired by the adventures of Arsène Lupin, a character created by Maurice Leblanc. Lupin's writing marries very personal stakes and thought-provoking commentaries on racism, classism, and more. Heists movies or shows cannot just be about cool heists. It has to have cool heists and clever getaways and all that. But there has to be something for the audience to relate to. And Lupin is centered around the incredibly personal tragedy of Assane. I really don't want to give away what's the tragedy because I want you to feel it firsthand. All I want to talk about is the feeling that it evoked, and it was anger. It was angry at the system, the people, and the societal structures that allowed misfortunate events to happen around Uzan, and hence, I was personally rooting for him to complete his mission. That's something essential for a heist-related story as well. You've to get behind the reason for the heist and actively pray that it succeeds. Or else, no matter how cool or big the set pieces are, it won't impress you. But, and it's a big but, after watching Lupin, I figured out that it's enough for the protagonist to have a lot to lose. The antagonist should also have a lot at stake. The official difference should be that the antagonist has more power to preserve everything that he holds dear, while the protagonist thinks he has more to do the same. That's what amps up the thrill of the heist and your urge to see that it gets through. However, what makes Lupin special is its ability to tie all this together with a searing commentary on classism and racism. Uzan is from Senegal and hence constantly faces an uphill battle to stand up to a predominantly white country. And he comes from the working class and hence struggles to expose the flaws in a system that favors the rich. It justifies the heists and turns him from a regular thief to a Robin Hood-esque character. Come to think of it, Robin Hood was also about class warfare. Lupin flows so smoothly that you won't realize you have reached the end of an episode and you will be left wanting for more. Lupin takes itself seriously because the themes and topics that it is dealing with are serious. But it knows how to have fun in between and use creative ways to keep you engaged. The whole show is structured around the art of pulling back. We, the audience, are shown the most zoomed in part of the picture. Then the show continues to pull back to show us the larger picture. Without giving away anything, after the first episode, the notion that the jail is the last place where Uzan should be is aptly established. It is a bad place, yes, but in addition to that, there is some horrible history attached to it. So, in the second episode when you see him entering the jail, you're instantly disappointed. That's exactly what the showrunners want you to feel, and that's when they start to expose why he's there and what he is about to do. And even when you think it's done showing the whole picture, it isn't. Coming to the heists themselves, I think that the directors ensured that they weren't too preposterous. Usually, in the heist genre, we're shown that the CCTV cameras are capable of capturing these high-resolution images into which the police authorities can keep zooming in until they can see the perpetrator's birthmarks. Yeah, that's not happening there. You get a vague image where only the color of the clothes is identifiable. The fight sequences aren't flamboyant in nature. They're designed in a way that feels doable for a person of Uzan's stature or Pellegrini's henchmen or the police or the security guards. The editing is seamless and only uses little alterations in the color temperature and a sound cue to denote the change in time. And the hair and makeup work are brilliant with its use of fake skin layers, detachable eyebrows, wigs, etc., which again, seems doable for a trickster like Uzan, and in my opinion, that's all you need to invest the audience, i.e. by keeping the suspension of disbelief at an optimum level. Omar Sy's portrayal of Uzan is a mixture of James Bond, Bruce Wayne, and of course, Ethan Hunt, and he's surrounded by a very talented supporting cast. Omar Sy is not your typical thief. If you take a cursory look at the actors who've played in this genre, you'll observe that if you put them in a crowd, no one is going to notice, with the exception of Armie Hammer and Henry Cavill, of course. Omar, however, will, because he's a strapping man, and the show illustrates that by putting him in some sharp suits and coats. That's why instead of going small and cowering to make himself look short, he goes big and loud so that everyone else's embarrassment becomes his camouflage. Because if they can't look at you straight out of humiliation, they won't remember you. And Omar does a good job at that. It's also during the quieter moments where he really shines because he's constantly in a race with himself and the world around him. So, when he sits down to contemplate the weight of his actions, Omar shows the kind of expressions he is capable of exhibiting. The supporting cast is efficient. They brilliantly accentuate Omar's performance while making their mark as well. The Pellegrinis, played by Clotilde, Nicole, and Pierre, showcase so many shades of a family and how they've been influenced by the powerful patriarch sitting at the top. They give off that feeling that you never know what's going to happen in the next few moments. Not because all of them are as dangerous as Hubert. It's because they aren't, and their silent submission is going to lead to catastrophe. Antonine Gouy plays Benjamin like the friend that you wish you had. Vincent Garanger and Johan Dionnet paint a troubling picture of the corrupt police commissioner Gabriel Dumont, with Garanger firing on all cylinders in Chapter 3. Lundes, Guerrab, and Boutella have an air of honesty around them that hasn't yet been polluted by Dumont. Ludivine and Aiden are so soft in their respective roles that you really don't want them to get hurt. Also, a shout out to Mamadou Haidara for giving such a stoic performance at such a young age. Lupin Part 1 is a fantastic show. I think I have read someone say that it's the first great show of 2021, and I totally agree with it. There's just so much to like in it, man, with the titular character being played by Omar Sy being one of the biggest reasons. And on top of being so smooth and perfect, the show is relevant because it reflects the rising racism, classism, corruption, and erasure of the free press that's going on in every democracy out there. So, what the hell are you waiting for? Go and watch it on Netflix right now. Feel the same anxiety that I am feeling after watching that cliffhanger ending, and then wait along with me for part 2 of season 1, whose bright idea was it divide a season into 2 halves and create all this anxiety? Show yourself. I just want to talk. Lupin is a modern retelling of the classic books on the adventures of Arsène Lupin, a gentleman thief and anti-hero created by Maurice Leblanc in 1905. The series follows Assane Diop, Omar Sy, a debonair thief, who resurfaces after 25 years to settle a score. His father killed himself after he was unjustly imprisoned for stealing a priceless necklace originally belonging to Marie Antoinette, leaving Diop all alone at the tender age of 14. Diop swears to exact revenge on Hubert Pellegrini, Hervé Pierre, the narcissistic, pitiless multimillionaire, who employed Diop's father and accused him of stealing the necklace even though he had no proof. His father's last gift to him before his death was a copy of the Arsène Lupin book. The books changed Diop's life as they guided him through thick and thin, essentially transforming into Lupin. 25 years later, Diop seeks vengeance as he hatches a plan to steal the very necklace that was the reason his father was imprisoned and bring down Pellegrini once and for all. Omar Sy is Assane Diop. Sy effortlessly inhabits the character of the urbane thief. Diop's character is essentially equal parts Sherlock Holmes, Luther, and James Bond. He is smart, charming, and fun to watch. In his many disguises, his body language changes to such an extent that Sy himself really does seem to be a master of disguise. Hervé Pierre is absolutely detestable as the egocentric magnate. Pierre does not have many pivotal scenes, but he is nonetheless captivating in the ones he is in. Ludivine Sagnier as Claire, Diop's ex-wife, makes Diop's character more grounded and gives the story some depth and real stakes. Other supporting actors like Nicole Garcia as Madame and Pellegrini, Vincent Garanger as Dumont, and Soufiane Guerrab as Youssef Guedira are also excellent additions to the cast. Lupin takes a very interesting route by making the Lupin books exist in the reality of the series. This not only grounds the series but differentiates Diop from Lupin as well. Complaints of Diop not being like Lupin don't hold because Diop is just one of the millions of readers inspired by Lupin. The show has a set format. It follows the beats of a conventional mystery or a heist story, but the execution has quite a few red herrings in the mix that have the potential to surprise even the most avid consumers of such content. Instead of being throwaway characters that are failed attempts to add motivation or hurdles to Diop's quest, the chemistry between the Diop and his family, especially the extra screen time that is given to Claire and Diop's relationship, makes Lupin surprisingly heartfelt. Similarly, Dumont, the police officer who locked up Diop's father, is also a grey character and very well written. The music in the series, from appropriately used songs to the original score, is excellent. The theme of Diop's character summarizes Lupin fairly well. It starts off as a classic tune but then adds modern elements along the way, just like the series itself does. Lupin is also quite aesthetic. It incorporates several visually stunning close-ups that almost look like portraits, but it does not do this at the expense of the understanding of the events of the screen themselves. Lupin has all the elements that can elevate it from an above-average show to a great one, but unfortunately, it does not tap into it. Lupin takes safe conventional writing choices, making it fun but inconsequential. This holds true for not only the story of the series but also its subtext. There is some degree of social commentary in the series, but it's all surface level. The background and backstory of Diop seem like a failed opportunity for the show to strike at something deeper. The series follows a non-linear format. The scenes of the past are a hit or a miss. Some work exceedingly well while others are a waste of time. The English dub is as usual immensely disappointing. The series must be watched with subtitles. Lupin is an engaging adaptation of equally engaging books about the antics of an antihero. Devotees of the original content may not enjoy Lupin a lot because of its deviance from the source material, but those unaware of Lupin would certainly enjoy this simple, albeit entertaining series from France. "Gentlemen never wear brown in London," Lord Curzon famously said. Curzon, the Viceroy of India who presided over the disastrous 1905 partition of Bengal and proved ineffective during the Indian famine at the turn of the 20th century, is of course dramatically ill-credentialed to wield pronouncements about how gentlemen should behave. In Netflix's new series Lupin, the charismatic hero wears not only brown but, at various times, the fluorescent orange of a delivery boy's jacket, a flatteringly cut purple suit, and black and yellow Air Jordans. And he does it all in a city more gentlemanly than London, Paris. Lupin, created by George K. and featuring a silken Omar Sy in the lead, is a stylish French series that aims to put those masquerading as gentlemen, those merely born into privilege, in their place. The series evokes the iconic gentleman thief of French literature, the character Arsène Lupin, created by Maurice Leblanc over 100 years ago. Instead of adapting Lupin's adventures directly, it pays stealthier homage by making Sy a dedicated admirer of the fictional character. He may not wear the top hat and monocle, though Sy can surely carry that off, but literally lifts tricks and ploys straight from the books. Sy plays Assane Diop, the son of a wrongfully framed Senegalese immigrant out for revenge, but going about this in striking fashion. The first episode, for instance, features Diop heisting a diamond necklace that once belonged to Marie Antoinette from the Louvre. Our hero is as chameleonic as he is charming, sleekly illustrated by a shot that stitches together Sy first as a floor cleaner patting down a red carpet outside the famed museum, and later stepping onto it in his evening best. Sy's character specializes in invisibility. It may be hard to imagine a tall, hulking, attractive man to blend into the shadows, but thanks to body language and makeup, I never joke about makeup, Diop says in one episode, he manages to appear like entirely different people, with rather miraculously entirely different smiles. If and when fingers are pointed in his direction, he counters them with insinuations of racism, the horrific suggestion that someone may have mistaken him for another black man, mortifying them enough to second-guess themselves. He stays a few steps ahead out of most people, but one man on his trail is another Lupin reader, a policeman who realizes that the classic novels offer him actual access to the criminal's playbook. He is, however, not taken seriously by his colleagues. Given that this investigator appears of Middle Eastern origin and is being mocked by his white colleagues, is this another hint of everyday racism? That said, the concept sounds outrageous. Who's next, they ask, about other suspects from books. D'Artagnan? The Three Little Pigs. The gentleman thief is an old and irresistible literary archetype, featuring such characters like Simon Templar, A.J. Raffles, Moist von Lübwig, and my beloved Hercule Flambeau, who's shown in G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown stories. Assane Diop, like Danny Ocean of the Oceans trilogy, Steven Soderbergh's Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, and Ocean's 13 are all streaming on Amazon Prime Video, is a crook who respects the traditions of the great intellectual pickpockets before him. Here is a man who may be late for a meal with his ex-wife but makes sure to discreetly slip her the alimony before she leaves. In a television landscape littered with fatally flawed antiheroes, there is something profoundly refreshing about following these exploits of a leading man striving to conduct himself with honor and class. This is a hero dedicated to of all things behaving well, and believing that his conduct makes all the difference. It may not, of course. He deals in deceit and his charm is often weaponized against unsuspecting people, and there is naturally no such thing as a victimless crime. Diop justifies what he does through his all-important mission of revenge, of course, but also through a reckless generosity toward others. He lays a diamond on an old woman's dresser because he had promised her husband that he'd make her smile. He is bound to acting with this grace, this almost performative grace, like that of a man in a top hat, and on the rare occasion we see him deviate from it, he falters and makes mistakes, nearly giving the game away. As Colin Firth had said so unforgettably in Kingsman, streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar, manners make the man. SY provides a masterclass in equanimity and economy. The actor from The Intouchables plays Asane close to his chest, revealing his cards only when he must, and always appearing to improvise when he does. There's a lightness and sense of play to his movements, his deft, feline movements as well as thuggish action scenes, and SY gives this character, suave as he is, a distinctive modesty. Whenever confronted, he pauses before he reacts, his inscrutable face marking him as unpredictable as he is clever. It's a preposterously smooth performance. The 5-episode first season is a rollicking affair, balancing knife fights and thrills with a sharp wit and keen observations. Lupin is the kind of show where a writer names her little dog J'accuse. It is also a show where a woman divides the world of men into barbarians and knights, both of whom she finds repugnant. It is up to Diop to convince her that there can be a third kind of man. It is an ideal both lofty and universal. The French word for gentleman is gentleman. Each episode of Netflix's new hit Lupin, a nimble caper series starring Omar Sy, The Intouchables, as gentleman thief Asane Diop, builds to the type of rug-pulling flashback that you might find at the end of an Ocean's movie. Disguises are ripped off, diamonds get pocketed, the dashing hero slips away, again. It's a classic heist movie device that could get repetitive or predictable, but, luckily, Lupin, with its mercifully short 5-episode first season and its endlessly charming leading man, executes each reveal with a high degree of finesse. With a show like this, getting fooled is half the fun. Last weekend, Lupin became the French-language series to grab a spot on the streaming service's top 10 list in the United States, and, as of this writing, it's sitting towards the top alongside other recent streaming juggernauts like Bridgerton and Cobra Kai. Not bad for a series that probably wasn't on your radar a couple weeks ago. Besides its ability to trick an audience with bits of narrative deception and its not too stressful sense of mischief, the show also boasts an intriguing literary backstory that makes it especially pleasurable to dig into. Here's why Lupin is such a surprising delight. Despite being right there in the title, Lupin is not the star of Lupin. Instead, the show focuses on Asane Diop, SY, a daring thief in contemporary France with a son, an estranged ex-wife, and a bearded best friend who serves as a fence for his stolen goods. If you're used to shows named after their protagonists, see House, Monk, Bosch, etc., you might be a little thrown off at first. So, the handsome guy in the thumbnail and on the poster isn't Lupin? Don't worry, it's not as confusing as it may seem. In the world of the show, Asane's exploits are inspired by the clever feats of Arsène Lupin, a fictional character created by French novelist Maurice Leblanc. The first Lupin story, The Arrest of Arsène Lupin, was published in 1905, and Leblanc went on to 17 Peruvian Nuevos novels and 39 novellas featuring the gentleman thief, known for using his gifts of trickery for good. Like George Clooney's roguish Danny Ocean or the patron saint of good guy thieves, Robin Hood he mostly shows as worthy targets to catch in his web of deception. Though Leblanc died in 1941, his famous character has gone on to appear in countless stories, movies, and television shows, including a 1932 Hollywood adaptation starring John Barrymore. Japanese artist Monkey Punch's popular manga Lupin 3, first published in 1967, which follows the grandson of the gentleman thief, spawned multiple adaptations as well, including 6 anime series, most recently, 2018's Lupin the Third Part V, a 1983 Laserdisc arcade game called Cliffhanger, and multiple animated feature films, most notably, The Castle of Cagliostro, the first movie directed by Hayao Miyazaki. However, Assane Diop seems to be focused primarily on the literary output. In Netflix's Lupin, Assane is first introduced to the Lupin books as a child by his father, Babacar, a Senegalese immigrant who worked as a valet for the Pellegrinis, a wealthy family that possesses a necklace once owned by Marie Antoinette. In the first episode, directed with just enough pedal to the metal intensity by the transporter filmmaker Louis Leterrier, Assane quickly assembles a team and steals the necklace from an auction by pretending to be both a janitor and a wealthy businessman. That initial robbery sets off the events of the rest of the series, which find Assane pursuing vengeance against the Pellegrinis for framing his father for a robbery years ago, an accusation that led to Babacar hanging himself in prison. That pursuit of justice gives Lupin a driving narrative and an emotional center. The episodes are often outfitted with flashbacks to Assane's childhood, where we see him first learning the skills that make him into the formidable yet compassionate criminal mastermind he is today, and these bits of character history give the show an intricacy and depth that elevates it above your average caper of the week adventure series. If you enjoy a good heist and appreciate an elegant twist, go ahead and let Lupin steal a few hours of your time. At times, the show feels like a highbrow spin on the blue sky/characters welcome era of the USA Network, when shows like Psych, Burn Notice, Suits, and White Collar mixed comedy and suspense week after week. Lupin isn't dark, gritty, or disturbing. But it's not frivolous, either. Most importantly, it's anchored by S.Y., who American audiences might recognize from his roles in Hollywood blockbusters like X-Men, Days of Future Past, Jurassic World, and Inferno. Switching out of costumes and wigs, he's the type of charismatic performer who holds your attention no matter who he's supposed to play in a given scene. He's believable as a father playing video games with his son, a romantic lead flirting with his ex-wife, or as an action hero beating up a pesky villain on a train. Lupin excels as a showcase for him. The other non-SY parts of the show, particularly the storyline about the cop attempting to catch Assane by paging through old LeBlanc novels, can be a little undercooked. Similarly, the flashbacks, though essential to the plot, are written in a way that occasionally strains credulity. Luckily, Lupin mostly keeps its attention on SY, allowing him to carry the show as it leaps from one cliffhanger to the next. The character might have a heavy lineage, but he wears it lightly. Need help finding something to watch? Sign up here for our weekly Streamail newsletter to get streaming recommendations delivered straight to your inbox. This film, written by George K. François Uzan, directed by Louis Leterrier Marcela said, starring Omar S.Y. Producers Isabelle Dejorgs. Cinematography Christophe Nuyens Marshall Schmeltz. Editors Jean Daniel Fernandez. Running time 41 to 53 minutes. Production companies Gaumont Television. Release January 8, 2021.